think from a fitness perspective, I know that I'm not as fit as I was, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, right? When I was racing triathlons. That's in part because I train nowhere near as much as I used to train, right? So like 20, 25-hour weeks, 30-hour weeks, that's not happening, right? I do kind of what I want to do now and what I enjoy doing, and that's my training generally. But I think with that, it also, for me, has allowed me to just say it is what it is. And I know that that's kind of hard, but as a mental thing, I also know that I'm never going to run, 14 flat for 5K again. Probably never going to swim as fast as I swim again, like also because I'm getting older. So that to me is the fun part of it, is that I know I'm not going to be fast. So how can I get better in these other ways that are going to help me race faster, right?
Welcome to ART,
the Adventure Race Training Podcast.
I'm Nick Herf.
And I'm Jason Magnus.
And with years of coaching experience and formal education in human performance, we've helped numerous athletes to achieve their goals and increase their self-efficacy. My background comes from formal graduate level education, coaching a variety of collegiate teams and professional endurance athletes. My athletes range from everyday racers to NCAA All-Americans and multiple world record holders.
And I'm the captain of Team Bend Racing. I've devoted the past 2.5 decades of my life to adventure racing, competing at the top level for over a decade. But I draw a lot of my coaching and training philosophy on my years as a top-level climbing, acrobatics, and highlining coach, essentially trying to minimize the learning curve on notoriously difficult sports. And I've also coached a few world champions. So together, Nick and I have some great successes.
Ultimately, we're here to share our knowledge and expertise with the community to help you prepare for your next big race. Our goal is that these conversations provide valuable insights to elevate your adventure.
All right, let's get started.
Our guest today is Jarrod Shoemaker, an adventure racer, endurance coach, and former pro triathlete who represented the United States at the 2008 Olympics in Beijing. He's also a 3-time U.S. national champion, 2 times world champion, and in 2009 was both the ITU WTS champion and duathlon champion. If that's not cool enough, he was also featured on the Wheaties box in 2008. Jarrod now competes in adventure racing and recently took 18th at the World Rogaine Championship in Spain with his teammate Jesse Spangler. This year, in 2025, he recently took second place at the USARA National Championships with Team High Point. All right, Jarrod, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining Jason and I, and we're pumped to have you.
Yeah, no, excited to be here with you guys.
So Jarrod, do you want to kind of just explain to us from your perspective how you would describe your athletic career and life up to this point to give everybody an understanding better of you?
I'll do the talk that I used to give all the kids when I was doing stuff for triathlons. So honestly, growing up, I just loved doing sports and playing anything and everything that I could. So baseball was probably my favorite sport, but I fell in love with running, went out and ran with my parents, my mom just ran her 35th Boston in a row, and she ran a couple before that, but there was a baby that happened in one of those years. So my family was athletic. My sister actually started out swimming, and then I followed her into that. She actually did triathlon first as well, so I will give her that. But yeah, I ended up going to Dartmouth and running there, and really enjoyed that. Did well, but realized that my competency was very high, but I was never going to run 13 flat for 5K, which is what you need to do for the Olympics. So I kind of got into the swim bike run because my uncle and my sister had done a couple triathlons, and yeah, just kind of fell in love with the sport, got good quick, and graduated in 2004 and won under 23 world champs 2005, made the Olympic team in 2008 and raced all the way until 2019. Yeah, it's crazy. I feel part like that was 2 days ago, and also like it was eons ago, as a just newly minted 43-year-old now.
Holy crap. So you were racing for 11 years, like pro?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was pro for like 15 years, 14 years, something like that, yeah.
And then were you on the Olympic team till 2019?
So I was on the national team from like 2005 until I missed the Olympics in 16, and then I
Okay.
did long course for a couple years after that. Yeah. Yeah,
And then
lots of training,
how'd you
lots of travel.
transition into adventure racing?
Yeah. Then I watched some people do eco challenge, and kind of got I was looking for what I wanted to do that would be fun. I was starting to mountain bike a little bit, partially because I don't love riding on the roads anymore, and so I was thinking about doing some Xterra stuff. And then honestly, I watched Eco Challenge, and then my two really good friends, Sarah McClarty and Misty Becerra, had been racing for quite a while and trying to get me into races, but I was obviously racing triathlons. So I told them, okay, whenever the next race is happening, I'm in, which was kind of the first race back when after COVID. So that was my first experience. And Hunter T-boned my canoe about 200 meters in the paddle, and I went swimming right at the beginning of the race. So that was my entry to adventure racing.
Like, luckily, you know how to swim. You could probably swim some paddling stages faster than people paddling them.
I actually have asked to do that. So in my training for One Water, I actually asked Cliff up with Maine Summer Adventure race, can I swim the paddle instead of doing that? Can I track everything, bike, and then swim the paddle? And the answer I got was no. The insurance would not cover that. And I was like, what if I just forgot to get into the boat? Just swim it.
You should have just towed your boat,
I
right?
mean, I've done that too. Yeah.
So, before we get into other stuff, so I just want to know what took you so long, man, because like similar path, I was never a high level, but I was into triathlon, and then I did one race called an adventure triathlon, and I never went back. Yeah, like what took you so long, man? I'm really excited that you're an adventure racer now, but that's like ten wonderful years where you could have been dominating our sport.
So there's this. Well, I will say that apparently there used to be money in adventure racing, but I was getting paid and had sponsors and everything. I was making a living off of triathlon until 2019. So, yeah, I did hear that there used to be good money and there used to be really, really good sponsors in adventure racing. So maybe it'll come full circle again.
Well, I mean, I think if you win world championships, or if you were to ask like the guys in New Zealand, like all those guys have made a decent living off of adventure racing, but like they're the only ones because they
Yes.
win all the money.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
4 hour fuel will make it big and pay for you.
yeah, we'll sponsor you as soon as we have enough money to do so,
Yeah.
Jarrod. So
Exactly.
well, it's coming around, man.
Oh, so what's the difference then? Nobody's getting paid to do this, but for triathlon, there's a whole different ball game, I'm guessing, with your relationship with the sport when, you're providing for yourself, your livelihood, family, etc. Can you kind of explain some of the pressures and maybe mindset shifts that are a little different there?
Yeah. It's funny. My wife was a pro triathlete as well, and we retired in 2019, both the same race. And she kind of laughs at me now and says, you realize you're paying to do these races. And, we used to get paid to do the races. And I will add that she is 1 for 1 in adventure races, retired on top, did one race with us. And she's like, I don't really like this. I'm done. And I've tried to get her back and it's a hard no. Um, what I would say is I loved doing triathlons. I loved the training, the day in, day out grind of trying to figure out how to get better, trying to figure out how to improve, doing the little things to get better. And so I just really enjoyed that. What I started getting frustrated with, I guess, is the fact that you just start to get slower, right? And so that's what I've actually really enjoyed about doing adventure racing, doing orienteering, doing swim run, is that it is a lot of mental as well as physical. Map and compass orienteering in the woods, but also figuring out fueling strategies, figuring out sleep strategies, trying to work together as a team. That to me is really, really different than triathlon because you're really just in it for yourself. So for me, honestly, like that's what I've kind of enjoyed with adventure racing and why I really haven't done any triathlons at all anymore. It's just the love of going out and trying to push boundaries that are not I don't know what the right word is, but not specific, right? I'm not trying to run my fastest 5K or 10K or half marathon or bike, 300 watts. I'm trying to go out and mix all these things together, which I think makes it a lot more interesting.
And I have a, question because like there are some, top level elite athletes that have moved from other sports into adventure racing. I think there are a lot that dabble in it, at some point in their career. But one of the things in the people that I've come across that a lot of them have struggled with that you don't seem to have struggled with. When you get really good at something, like you were saying, if you can run, what your 10K pace is, your 5K pace is, and all of a sudden you might do an adventure race where you never can open up because you're running through the forest with down logs and swamp. And so you can't run, right? And so that's part of that mentality. You can do all the training you want and think it's going to happen. And like, hey, we're gonna run these things at this split and bust out. And all of a sudden you're dragging your canoe through the forest. I've met a lot of really good athletes that have tried adventure racing and they get frustrated because they can't just go faster than everybody else the whole time, or they may never have run through the forest off trail. And all of a sudden they're doing that. And it's like, this sucks. I'm getting cut up. I'm tripping on logs. You know, and
Scrape my arm.
yeah, exactly. And so like, there's a level of triathlon. I was kind of the opposite when I first did my adventure race. I was like, oh, this is awesome because you said you knew you'd never be an Olympic half marathoner because you just weren't fast enough. Like I can actually run faster than most people through the woods, even though if we get on dirt road, I'm toast. Right. And so like how was that for you? Kind of, was that a strength that you didn't mind kind of slowing down sometimes and just pushing through rough terrain?
You put it exactly right. It's a completely different mindset. And I actually enjoy it. It's funny because I would consider myself a very individual athlete, but the second you put me on a team, I'm going to try and figure out what the best thing to do is for that team. So you need to give me more weight to slow me down. Fine, right? You need to you want me to go ahead and, try and lead the way and, clear stuff, bushwhack a bit more, find the right path. Cool. I've definitely enjoyed that part of it. I've actually enjoyed trying to figure out how to make the team work better. And I also think I've gone into races where I'm lead navigating, like C2C and some other ones, and I've gone to other races like Endless where I was basically the mule, right? And I just said, navigation brain off. Doing anything with it, I'm not even going to think about it. Just tell me what I need to know. So I think if you can kind of put yourself into the fact that what you need to do what's best for the team, that kind of makes it fun, right? And, can I do this right now? Can I help you out with this? Because I look at it as the team is what's going to do. And I mean, this is kind of what happened when Jeff broke his collarbone at C2C, right? We were a team of 4. Rachel and I could have kept going and finished and still won the race, but I was like, but our team's done, right? And that we're here as a team. We're here as a team of 4. We should finish as a team of 4. And so that's kind of the mentality that I've taken into adventure racing. And I think maybe that's helped me not think about going fast because I can't go fast. I have to go the speed of, our slowest member.
How'd you handle like the psychological aspect of that? Because I feel a lot of adventure racers they do the sport and they do it for years. As they're coming down off that peak, we start to see where they're focused on more navigation and these other things. But I think sometimes looking at like your identity as a professional athlete for so many years and then recreating yourself and transitioning into another phase of life. I mean, I've seen athletes at the college level that have struggled with that and try to shape their mindset preparing. Could you kind of explain some of what that transition looked like for you?
Yeah, I think from a fitness perspective, I know that I'm not as fit as I was, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, right? When I was racing triathlons. That's in part because I train nowhere near as much as I used to train, right? So like 20, 25-hour weeks, 30-hour weeks, that's not happening, right? I do kind of what I want to do now and what I enjoy doing, and that's my training generally. But I think with that, it also for me has allowed me to just say it is what it is. And I know that that's kind of hard, but as a mental thing, I also know that I'm never going to run, 14 flat for 5K again. Probably never going to swim as fast as I swim again, like also because I'm getting older. So that to me is the fun part of it, is that I know I'm not going to be fast. So how can I get better in these other ways that are going to help me race faster, right? So I've worked on my mountain bike skills, Rudy, Rocky mountain bike stuff. If I can be better at that, that's going to help my team. If I can be better at navigation, that's going to help my team. So I've really thought about it that way. How can I get better at the little stuff instead of thinking of fitness? I do always joke that there's like perma fitness, just from doing it for so long. Like I can still go run like 16 flat for 5K off of like 2 workouts. And that's just because my body knows what to do for like a mile and a half, 2 miles. And then I just hold on for the last mile. If you ask me to go run 10K fast, I might not be able to do it. I can still run, a steady marathon. But I do think that as an athlete, it's hard. It is very hard to kind of realize that you're past your prime of going fast. And so to me, that's why I've enjoyed doing something completely different that I have I didn't do when I was younger.
That makes a lot of sense. What advice would you have for people who are in that mid-range of the adventure racer? So they aren't going to be training a whole heck of a lot, but they want to kind of find ways to increase their ability. So you talked about the mountain biking and working on the navigation, but do you have any tangible ways to get out and do some of that?
I still think people should be doing a lot of fast stuff. I know adventure racing is slow and steady, but I do think getting out and doing some interval stuff is super important on the bike and the run. It doesn't have to be like all out 200s, but like go do some 400s, at a faster pace, because it does really help you bump up your threshold, right? That's kind of a training thing, coaching thing, right? So the faster you go, the higher you can move your threshold, right? So if you go do slow and steady all the time, it's not like you're not going to be good, but you might be missing a little bit more when there's that steep hill climb that you have to do, or you need to run just a little bit faster to, because you guys want to make a cutoff, or you want to get to a transition sooner.
And raising your threshold actually increases your slow and steady pace,
Yeah,
right?
should.
So I think it's valuable. And the only thing that I'm missing, you didn't say anything about paddling. And more of my wins since I like have been in paddling, and again, that's what a lot of adventure racers skip, is they just think of the paddling the same thing. Like you got to go out if you really want to be competitive in a race that has big paddle stages. You got to be doing the same way you train for the run and the bike with higher intensity stuff. You got to be doing bump sets. You got to learn what it's like to put wattage out in the power, so that if you are paddling for 10 hours, you don't just lily dip the whole time. Just like, like when your threshold is high enough. And I just want our listeners to understand something about Jarrod. I like when he's talking about his lack of fitness, and he's like throwing down these times like, oh, like I can't run a 14 anymore, but I can run a 16. And I
Ouch.
don't know what Nick's felt like, but I'm just like, it's amazing because he still has a ton of fitness and he's still really fast. And I can't do any of those things, right? And that's one of the cool things about adventure racing is like Jarrod and I probably have a lot of the same training philosophies, but I'm betting if we were just looking at our intensity trainings, I would I don't even want to do that. I'd be like, oh my God. But it's fun. We can still compete on the same playing field because we're still working with these same training methodologies. And again, adventure racing has so much more about like moving fast over a variety of terrain, long time. And if I was to do a 2-hour triathlon, like Olympic distance triathlon, I bet I would be twice as slow as Jarrod, even though I used to do this a lot. But thank God I would never want to race him in anything shorter than like a 24-hour race. Because then,
Yeah,
then there's some equalization, which is good.
yeah, exactly. Well, it's funny because I know you mentioned paddling, and so I do paddle occasionally, but honestly, I still swim, and so I think that is transferable to paddling. Yes, it's different, but it's very transferable to paddling in terms of shoulder strength, rotation, and stuff like that. But absolutely, I think I always watch that and how much time we make up on people in races, like mid-pack people, right? And, like we make hours up on the mid-pack paddling. And it's not necessarily because we're, better paddlers, but we all do a little bit of paddle training before the race. And the other thing is which I think can be you know, a very big thing as well, is that we can paddle. I know what it feels like to paddle with with usually Chris in the front. But it understanding how water moves, understanding how to pull water, understanding how rivers move, like those are all things that you can learn and watch, and they will, as you know, significantly increase your paddle time, right? And trying to figure out, if it's a bony river and you can find the right places to actually paddle it instead of get stuck 20 times, you're gonna you're gonna be 20 minutes ahead of somebody who got stuck.
Definitely. To actually get out and paddle is kind of a pain in the butt, right? Like you got to load up a boat or blow up a pack raft. If you don't live near a body of water, most people don't. You got to go to a body of water. So you mentioned cross training with the swimming, which is very similar muscle groups. So what are some other ways that you guys know of cross training for it for people who maybe don't get the opportunity to paddle?
He's got a rower set up in his garage. I've seen it.
Yeah, not even a rower. Like if you're going to invest, get an erg, like a
Yeah.
kayaking erg. And
Yeah.
then, that was my single best paddling training investment is a kayaking erg, and like part of these things are, especially as you get older and, with kids and all that stuff, like lowering the bar to doing effective training is huge. Like I'm super envious of this like idea when I was younger, when I had 20 hours a week to train, and like if Chelsea was listening to Jarrod, like, wait, he got to train 30 hours a week. That's like her fantasy, right? Like, no kids, no nothing, just train her ass off all the time, have a coach, have nutrition, just like do it, right? In another life, she would have been a pro something, pro everything, right? Whatever, right? But really like having, that's why I think people suck at paddling. Oh, like in general of these three sports is because they think they got to go paddle on a canoe, or when they finally get out there, they don't really actually do any training. They just kind of paddle around a bit. There's no specificity. There's no idea of what they're trying to do. And, paddle training was something that I learned early was the biggest advantage. Like I could invest very little time in effective paddle training and my adventure racing team would do much better. For us to all get fast enough to compete with Jarrod on flats, like that was just never going to happen. We could train running all day long, right? At our age, but paddle training is a pretty low hanging fruit for most teams. But like what exercises? Like, I mean, there's probably a lot of the similar swimming weight exercises, rows.
Stuff like lap
Um,
pulls. I mean, just doing bands, lap pulls, stuff like that. It's
And pull
the thing
apart.
with paddling is like it's the rotation and the engagement. And if you watch like Olympic paddlers, right, they're not moving any of their upper body. They're rotating, right? It's all coming from the core. And most people when they're paddling are doing this, right? They're literally just using their arms. So even understanding how the paddle stroke should work is probably a first step for a lot of people.
Yeah, tons of efficiency in learning that paddle stroke. I mean, if you have a 2-person canoe or a 3-person canoe and you get it in sync, I mean, you fly. And if things are rough, you can, you're hitting, as long as you're at the right angles, you're flying over the waves. And then cross country skiing is a way that you can get some of that upper body too, or ski-mo, things like that.
I got lots of that in Florida. So.
Yeah, I picture you on the sand dunes just going at it. Um, And then one thing I'm thinking about too is some of the athletes I coach, they have certain issues where maybe they're a little older, they don't have any cartilage in their knees. So their running for them isn't even really too feasible of an option, right? So for them, paddling is something that we spend a lot of time on because it is an advantage that they can spend extra time working on, in addition to power walking and uphill walking and making the legs crazy strong for going up steep climbs.
at least in my mind, when I'm coaching people, and if we're looking at the three main disciplines of paddling, running, and biking, like realistically, a lot of biking, other than bike handling, like on technical terrain, that's at least in the studies that I've read, like wattage is wattage on a bike. Like, they used to talk about perfect circles and all kinds of things, but like the research has not backed any of that up. It's like get on the bike, push wattage, like, work your threshold and intensity and stuff like that and learn the skills. And then running, there is a lot more technique that goes into efficiency, like running efficiency and gait and stride length. And then paddling is probably the most. Like, so as far as like looking at those three things with technique, right? As far as like what it translates to speed, paddling technique, just like swimming. It's a lot like swimming. Like I've seen that with paddling, like investing in just the technique goes a long way because then your power actually goes towards moving the boat through the water most efficiently and not just wasted power, right?
It's it's weird because I always tell people when they're trying to swim faster, you actually want to go easier. Like the harder you try to swim fast, the slower you go. Like the more force you put on the water, like that force, you go slower, right? Like fast swimmers are like super engaged and it's almost easy to swim hard. And paddling is I would say similar to that, but honestly so is biking hard. Like like when your muscles are engaged and when you're comfortable on your bike, it's smooth and hard. It's not mashing. It's not, feeling like you're going to die every single pedal stroke. It is a smooth hard. And so that's the only thing I would say with the kind of, perfect circle type stuff is that the more engagement you have with your, with all of your muscles, the kind of easier it is from a, kind of cycling perspective.
That's awesome. What's your thought on nutrition during the race? So I know in triathlon, people get super regimented. I think is it Cameron Worth just did like some crazy 200 grams an hour of carbohydrate and set the record there. And it seems like very different than AR, but similar. So I guess what are your thoughts kind of with your background and cross colliding in?
All of my teammates will answer this question, which is Jarrod is a really, really bad eater, especially when I'm nabbing. I am bad at eating and I need everybody to tell me to eat. I will eat when they tell me to eat. So I tell all my teammates that, like, remind me to eat, ask me if I've eaten anything, give me part of your part of what you have, because I'm bad at it. And the one thing that I will admit all day long is that I am not a good eater. I'm working on getting better on it. I've actually been trying to take a page out of Jason's book and trying to drink more calories instead of eat more calories for a couple of reasons. Definitely more efficient and weighs less to try and do water plus get water and mix it versus carrying all of your calories. So I'm kind of experimenting with stuff. I will say that I like eating real food. So for me, I don't really love just doing bars. I kind of want like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, stuff like that. So I'm probably not the best person to talk to about nutrition in adventure races for sure. I feel like I can fake 24 hours without a problem, but once you get up to the expedition races, you really need to be, on top of things. And I mean, to be honest, every expedition race that I've done, and I've only done 2 others. So as my teammate Chris says, I just take a bar with me and eat at every transition, which is a different style of racing than having to bring meals with you and eat them on the fly, and it's a little different. So I will say I am not the best at that. It's something that I'm working on, and it's something that I try and get better at each race. And it's hard. You need to plan it and think about it, but then you actually have to do it, which I think for me is the hardest part, is actually doing the eating. I can plan it, but yeah.
Jarrod, I have to say that makes me very happy because I thought I was the only one. I know all the science behind it. I know how it works. I run a, AR-based nutrition company, right? And my biggest downfall is when I'm navigating or captaining a team, I basically think I'm eating, or I like, oh, I should eat. And even though I have all these things, I just find myself falling off the pace of the rest of my teammates. And my teammate, Daniel Stodigal, is, he is amazing because his bonk on Eco Challenge, like, was seen by millions of people around the world, not the most flattering, like, that he changed his athletic life based on episode 1 of that, right? And it's amazing because he knows how important eating is. And he's like literally a Tour de France rider that never misses a calorie. I'm trying to get better as we lead up towards Worlds because I know that I am stronger if I constantly eat before I get hungry, right? But more often in racing, just like you're navigating, you're thinking about 1,000 other things, and it's almost like an afterthought, even if you know it's important, right? And it's kind of impossible. Anyway, I'm just happy to know that like that is a problem for you too. So maybe we can like solve it together, and we'll be in a race together, and we'll just be like, "Did you eat? Did you eat?" And then we'll be fine, right?
I did buy some really good stuff. It's called 4 Hour Fuel. I'm going to take it over to Sweden and use it for me.
Yeah, I'm excited. I want to hear about that's. Can we ask him about that? Because he's going back for the 3rd time, right?
Yeah.
4th time. 3rd time.
Yeah, before we get there, there's one thing I want to hit with the nutrition piece, and that's, I would say, just like you said, in a race, when you're looking at, okay, what's your nutrition look like? Because maybe that's, it's often likely the way to increase. I think with your daily life training with a lot of athletes, once they kind of dial that in a bit, often they're eating, either unhealthy, or I have a lot of athletes that just don't eat nearly enough. Once you kind of get the calories up, it's like they sleep better, their body composition just changes because they're getting nutrition in them, and I feel like they're fueling their training sessions better. I mean, do you guys notice that with the athletes you coach as well?
Absolutely. I've always been a believer in your body kind of tells you what you should be doing if you kind of have things in balance, right? And so there are things that can throw your body out of balance. Stress, cortisol, all that stuff can like really, really mess up like what your body wants to do for eating. So if you're generally fairly balanced and you're eating the right types of food, which I think of as like clean foods, not eating out at McDonald's or eating like out dinners all the time. But if you're generally eating, pretty clean types of foods, your body's going to get where it needs to go, and it's going to tell you what to do if you listen to it. And so that's kind of the way I do it. I mean, I eat a good amount of ice cream, and I love ice cream, and this is where my 24-hour fuel comes in. It's you have a little bit extra on there, and it works out for the last bit of a race. Once you understand and can eat consistently and healthy and like make that a part of your schedule, it works really, really well. And you don't end up, that's, I think the problem most people have is that they try and take the easy way out, which is, stopping and getting fast food or getting, ordering out dinners. And those just aren't the best things for you.
What I think is interesting, kind of on that nutrition thing is like we all have different guts, right? We all have different ways that we respond to food. But oftentimes, like on social media and stuff, things get popularized by these elite athletes. Like I love Mary Chandler. Like in the adventure race space, she's as kind of as elite as they get. And like she survives on Cheez-Its and Mountain Dew, right? And that works for her. But that, like if you look at what Courtney Dauwalter eats in these big ultras, like, they don't like they are gifted genetically. They have great guts. Like they're obviously getting what they need because they're performing at a high level. But when I have, clients that I'm coaching that at least looking at their diet and asking them like, are you even conscious of what you're eating, how much you're getting? Are you paying attention to I, as I get older, I turned 50 this year, like the faster, more competitive I can continue to get without adding fitness. Cause like I keep trying to add fitness, but it's hard. It gets harder and harder as I get older, right? And so it's just like trying not to decline. Like if I can like very slowly go down, but then maximize nutrition, sleep, attitude, like recovery, all that kind of stuff, then I have a couple more years at least.
That's awesome. Yeah, so Jarrod, you want to hop into One Water and tell us about that?
Oh boy. Third attempt for One Water. The first year, I was on one Team USA. Jason was on another Team USA. You guys actually made it pretty darn far. You made it almost to the big swim.
But how many Team USA's finished?
None.
A big
Nobody.
zero.
Nobody nobody that doesn't have some sort of relationship with Sweden hasn't finished yet. Every team that's finished has some relationship with Sweden, whether a member of their team lives in Sweden, lived in Sweden for a long time, or is Swedish.
Or was the Swedish like
Yeah.
world swim run champion.
Yeah,
It's a very,
exactly.
very few people that have finished that race. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And that's I tell people that all the time too. There's the Australian team, which has one person who lived in Sweden, or I think he still lives in Sweden, doesn't he? They've finished 3 times, 3 years. The Swedish team that's won twice, one of their members got sick. They've finished 2 out of 3 years, and other than that, there's only 3 other teams that have finished. Is that right? Three? Yeah, 3 other teams that have finished, and that's it. Like that's the crazy thing. Out of there's probably 100 of us that have tried. So, anyways, yeah, 250K swim run in the Stockholm archipelago, and it's about 70K of swimming. I'd say it's maybe not 250K. It's probably more like 200K. The trekking and running. It's crazy though. It's a lot of bushwhacking. Some roads, some gravel roads. The water's cold. It's 60 to 64 degrees. It is, in my mind, the toughest race there is. It is just brutally physically and mentally challenging. And it's it's also got this mesmerizing beauty in it too. It's just a beautiful setting. So yeah, going back for a third time, watched it last year and was watching it and listening and seeing everything and just said, I got to finish this thing. So I actually reached out to Chris, who was on Jason's team the first year, and we had kind of kept in touch since that race and hadn't ended up racing with each other. We had talked about doing some swim runs, and I said, "Hey, man, you want to finish it?" And I got a text message back saying, "Yeah, I do." And Kristen, who's our boat person, was over there actually helping, and I texted her during the race, and I said, "I think I'm back in. Are you in?" She said, swear word, yeah. So I was like, all right, we're good to go. We got to find a great female athlete. And so I reached out to a couple of good friends and my friend who I used to race triathlons with from France. She was, draft legal professional triathlete and went to the Olympics in 8 and 12 and has done a bunch of swim runs over the past several years. She basically said, yeah, love to go for it and love to do the challenge. So we have been training our butts off over the past 6-7 months since we got approved to get back into the race. And it's, less than a month away now, which is kind of cool and scary.
It feels like adventure racing kind of had this arc when nobody, like everything was new and everybody's kind of making up things and trying to figure out. And now with this race, with the exception of those few teams that basically live, breathe, swim, run, and Swedish culture and those islands, right? That you're going into these people and people are trying to figure out how not to get hypothermic, like how to sleep in a wetsuit, how to there's so many problems, even with the fact that you have a boat support, right? I mean, it's just a really cool, complicated, out there at the edge of the world problem, which I think is pretty awesome. And hopefully you guys can you pull it out this year. Third time's a charm, right?
I am optimistic for our team. I don't know when this is going to go live, but I'm assuming it's not going to be the next couple of days. We've been doing a lot of work together as a team. We've actually been doing a lot of sports psych work as a group, and we're all over the place, right? So I'm East Coast, Kristen's East Coast, Chris is West Coast, Jess is in France. So we've actually been doing sports psych work and team building work to really try and expedite the process of getting to know each other and understanding how we work as athletes, which, as Jason knows very well, like, when you find good teammates and when you understand and trust people, your team's better. It's really hard to jump into a race and just have 4 random people together and hope it works. So we've really worked hard on that. We've got a text thread going that's been going, since we said we're going to do it. And so we're keeping each other motivated. About a little over a month ago, I swam on the hour every hour from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. because you don't need to swim 70K straight. You need to swim 70 by 1K. And that's the challenge of the race. Isn't that I think there's a lot of us that can swim that much and run that much over the course of a long weekend. But the problem is that it's random, right? So it's a 500-meter swim, it's a 1K run, it's a 2K swim, it's a 500-meter bushwhack, and it's just repetitive. So I've really tried to focus on turning my brain off on the swim and just saying, yep, I'm just going to swim what the swim is because there's nothing I can do about it. And we're going to get from point A to point B. And to me, that's been the hardest point, is just getting in the water and just swimming. The land's fine. I mean, I feel like I can do the land, but the swimming is when you're in your own head too, because you can't talk to your teammates. They're in front of you, behind you, on the boat next to you, but you're in your own head.
And it's dark. Like some of the time it's dark. Like looking, being there that first year and then also paying attention. Most of the teams that are, there are definitely some teams that are dropping out because they don't have the physicality, right? There's always a few of those teams that are like, oh, no way. But most of the teams that are dropping out are dropping out because of exactly what you're saying. It's the team dynamics. Like, the race is going to break down. And I think that's where some of these top teams, I know the Australian team that finished, Rob Preston and Elizabeth Dornan, right? Like they're extra athletes, great swimmers, all that stuff. But, they succeeded very well because they've adventure raced at an expedition level together for 20 years, right? So they have a lot of that teamwork, that expedition breakdown, and then, overcome. Like you can be a world champion triathlon or, bike or whatever. And we just don't hit those points where like we definitely want to stop and break. And when our tempers get there, like I remember seeing video of you guys like having some tough times on that first year, right? Like, like with the team dynamics. And you can overcome some of those, but I think, I think I think you guys are being really smart with the sports psychology part. And that's the same thing with a lot of expedition racers in AR or one water race. If you don't acknowledge how important that is, like you can have all the fitness in the world, but you're never going to make it. Right. That's the cool thing to see you guys doing this year is really prioritizing that as part of your training. It's not just how fast you can swim and run and how long. It's can we actually sustain ourselves and keep our team culture going when everything is telling us to or trying to rip it apart, which is what the race does, really.
Oh, yeah. And part of it is that like you have to have the awareness of yourself of what is going to happen to you to some extent, right? So you have to have that awareness and be able to share that. So, and I think a lot of people either don't get to that point or they have a hard time looking inside. And I know I have faults, I have positives, but like if I can tell my team, for instance, I'm bad at eating, you're going to have to help me eat. They need to know that. I want them to know that. I also want them to know like if I'm navigating that they need to just follow me. They can ask me questions, but I don't want, specific things like why are we on this trail? Right? You can say we're going north, we should be going south. What's wrong? That's fine, but don't ask me to tell you why we're following this path because that's going to be a 10-minute discussion. You have to keep moving forward. You just have to trust me at that point. So there are specific things that as you learn more about each other and learn about the positives and the negatives, you can work through it with other people. You also have to understand, as Jason said, as you get tired and you get mad and you have these breakdowns, like somebody's going to have a low at some point and you got to pull them through it. You got to get them through it. The problem is, and what you can't have is when an entire team has a low at the same time, because that's when fireworks happen. And so you kind of have to figure those things out and try and work with your teammates. And I do think that is where the good teams get better, is because they just roll with things and they understand how to communicate, they understand how to talk to each other, they understand what the other person needs before they even need it. Right? It's, looking at them and saying, I need to cheer you up, I need to get you some food, I need to crack a joke, I need to take some weight off your back before they've even said anything. And that's, I think, what makes good teams successful in this, obviously, is one water or adventure racing. I mean, the crazy thing about one water is just the amount of gear, the amount of things that can happen, bringing different types of wetsuits, bringing different types of lube, because we can't stop and get everything. Like we are not allowed to even stop at a grocery store on an island if we run by it. You are not allowed to do anything. Actually, the first year we came out on this one dock, the middle of the day on day 2, and there's a restaurant right next to us, and people are literally sitting there in like, nice get up, eating burgers, and we're on a dock and, neoprene, and it's beautiful sunny out, and we're like in the water, swim to the next island. I was like, I just want a burger, right? But yeah, that's, that's the way the race is. And so you have to go into it with that mentality of, we are a team, we are a closed circle of 4 people, and we are going to do everything we can do to help each other.
What do you think some of the conversations are that teams should have prior to going into a race? Usually I look at common things people would encounter or things that they should talk about, but what are some other topics or specifics?
I mean, I always think that it's good to tell people what you're weak at, right? So, because then they can understand how to help you. And obviously that's making yourself vulnerable, but it's also, I think, making your team a lot better. So if you can understand what you're weak at and tell people, hey, this is what I'm going to need help with during the race, that's going to make the team better. That I also think, like, the cool thing about adventure racing, and we're kind of doing the same thing in one water, is kind of having your roles and staying in your lane too, right? And Jason can probably tell you a lot more about this than I can because he's got a lot more experience. But like when you have your role, you stick to it. And you don't try and go into somebody else's lane unless they ask for your help, because And that's the quickest way to start blowing things up, is second guessing people or trying to tell people that they're not doing a good job, and that can get, in your head. So the
Well,
kind of
and
thing I'd say.
yeah, and that's really well said. And I think we talked a little bit, I think, about one of our last podcasts about some of the struggles with military teams kind of coming into this sport. And I think there's a fine line, because I think it's super important to stay in your roles, right? Because oftentimes when we start to ask those annoying questions, what we should be focusing on is like, how can I do my role better, right? Instead of like I'm not feeling great right now, so I'm gonna like do little digs, or like, hey, why are we on this trailer? Oh, let me look at the map, or all these things, right? And at the same time, as a team, we don't want to be so rigid that when somebody does have that breakdown, that we don't recognize it, and give them a little bit of leeway, right? Because you also can't be like, hey, shut up, like this is my job. Like if you're doing that too much, then that just puts them into this spin, right? To the credit of what you said about knowing what the weaknesses are, one of the things that I find especially important is not only admitting to your team what your weaknesses are and how they can help you, but being very specific about the ways in which they can help you, the emotional framing. And sometimes, like for me, for example, like when I start to get tired, when I haven't eaten enough, when I get to that low point, right, where I feel like physically weak on the team, I don't like that feeling. Like sometimes what I need is space. I don't need them to fix the problem, right? And if they try to fix the problem by like, hey, I'm fine giving up my pack now at this point, but like, when Chelsea turns around and says, what's wrong? You're going slow. Like that is not going to help me, right? Like what I need is to be put in front and just to like have everybody shut up and let me do my best for 15 minutes until I have my internal pity party, and then I'm over it. Dan is the opposite way. Like if he's upset, he wants to basically have a 3-hour psychology team talk as we hike. And that's how he gets out of it, right? Everybody gets to say their feelings and do it. Like that's just who he is, right? It's important to know like what our weaknesses are, but also recognize that we all have triggers, right? And somebody could be trying to help and making it worse. And if we haven't had those conversations, especially at an elite level on a team, when we're trying to win things or do really hard things, then the system's still a little bit broken, even though we all have the right idea. And one of the things that we've had a tremendous success with the last 5 years is, strange as it sounds, is just safe word. Like we have a team safe word, which I'm not going to tell you what it is, because if you hear it out there when you're racing, you're like, oh, it's odd, right? But like the safe word just is like, there's basically, it's kind of like having a fight in a relationship. You're like, distance, like we're all taking our space, and then we're going to come back on neutral terms. Like this is during the race, right? And like we have this whole protocol that like gives everybody kind of space to be heard and be silent if they need to. But like those just basically say nothing that we've talked about is working. I need a reset. And that has helped us literally save races in like world championships that would have imploded if we didn't have safe word. If I could get more of my clients doing their first big expedition or overnight race to spend more time on the emotional training, I think there'd be a lot higher success rates.
I will say there's, the one thing that I've told my team is I said, I will complain about getting back in the water. I know I will do it. I said, just pull me in. If I get in the water, I'll go. And so we were actually joking about it earlier today, because I was telling him that, and then I was telling them I'm also going to be screaming under the water sometimes too. And Jess basically quoted and said some quote from Alien, like you can't hear screams in space or whatever, so you can't hear screams in Sweden, right? Because I'll be under the water screaming about how much I hate this right now. Exactly. So it is so true. Like, and honestly, the other thing that is the more you race with the same people, the better it can get too, because you learn about each other and you learn stuff that people don't even realize about themselves too. So like for us, this is also trying to speed up that process, because the four of us have never raced together. I've obviously raced with Kristen, but Chris and Jess and I have not raced together. So it's really trying to put the puzzle together in advance of some of that stuff happening, and also trying to weasel our way through other things.
Something that helped is just discussing how do we make decisions and certain decisions that you're probably going to see on a race. So, for example, if there's we'll say like Worlds, there's a class 3 paddle, right? Do you hit that at night, in the day? What's people's experience level? So that way you're not tired, sleep deprived, trying to make decisions that maybe you could have made black and white earlier, even though a lot's gray. But Are there any with open water that you guys are like? What are some of the conversations you're happening maybe that are less the psychological piece and more on strategy or decisions? Or
We've actually done that. We're gonna kind of write them down, but we've definitely made some kind of black and white rules. And one of them involves swimming at night because they've changed the rules a bunch of times. The first year, swimming at night was great. The boat was next to us, and they would kind of not lead us, but guide us and make sure we got to the same place or the right place. The second year, we got in the water, and they're like, "Oh, we have to follow you." And we're like, well, how do we know where we're going? And so we were like swimming all over the place and missed the islands. So because we didn't have strategy for it, because we assumed it was going to be the same as the first year, and they changed it. And honestly, that left a horrible taste in my mouth. And
Jarrod, I just have to jump in because even the first year when that was allowed to happen, we swam in a complete circle. Like my team swam in a complete circle. It was crazy. Anyway, so
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
imagine without the lead boats, it's even more intimidating at night.
right. So kind of one of the things we've done for that is we said, all right, if we see where there's a chance that we're going to have to do a 3K or a 4K swim at night, which could happen depending on where the map falls. It probably won't happen though. We would actually kind of skirt islands instead. So add a little bit of swimming on to know where we are, because the problem is if you end up on the wrong island, you spend just as much time trying to figure out where you are and get back on course. So we've kind of come up with a couple of things on that where it's like we're not gonna swim more than a K without knowing where we are, because more or less that's what you can see out there with one of our long laser lights that we bought. There's that. We also have a rule that we're not going to stop at all. We're going to try and eat on the run, move on the run, except in cases of, we need lube, we need blisters, stuff like that. We are going to try and keep moving, because the biggest problem that you have in adventure racing is stop and look at the map for 10 minutes. Stop and do this for 10 minutes. Stop and do this for 10 minutes. And all of a sudden you've lost an hour of time not moving, right? So that's one of our other rules. And then we are still working on a couple of rules where we're going to either drop pull buoys or drop shoes to swim with. And that's going to be like, stuff over 2K or 3K, where it makes sense, where you can swim faster without a pull buoy or without your shoes on. So yeah, so we got a couple of things like that, just from a logistic perspective, that we're really, really looking at. And then the other piece that we looked at from a map perspective is really, we kind of looked at like, go to the shortest distance from this island to this island. But what we should be looking at is when you get to this bottom island, how are you going to get across it? And that is one thing that we really hadn't looked at. So we're like, all right, try and find the flatter part of the island, or something where there's not a lot of rocks or elevation change on the islands that you're going across. So we're really trying to maximize, like not just our swimming, but also where we're getting off on those islands. Because we found ourselves, climbing over cliffs because it was the thing that jutted out the furthest, right? Yeah. Get to the land when we should have gone 150 meters to the right, swam a little bit further in, and you're flat. But the hard thing is those aren't easy decisions to make when you're swimming or mapping, because you kind of have to do it really quickly and on the fly. So we're really going to try and hone those things in for this race.
Well, and like, to any listener that hasn't really understood swim run, like, it's worth looking up the one water race. I'm sure it'll be in the show notes. And even if you don't look up the one water race, just pull up a Google map of the Stockholm archipelago. And it still starts in Ardhoma, right?
Oklahoma, yeah.
Yeah, Ardhoma, and then finishes at the famous lighthouse. I can't remember what it's
Yeah,
called. Landsort. Yeah. But like, just looking at that chain of islands, tiny islands, big islands, it like begs, as an endurance adventurer, you're just like, I wonder if we could, and that's exactly how the sport started. Just like, I wonder if we could swim between all these islands and end up there. And it is really such a unique event. It just is phenomenal. One of a kind event in the world. Trying to understand the scope of what Jarrod is going to attempt for the third time, because it's really, really remarkable. And hopefully there'll be a lot of people cheering you on when you touch the
That's the
lighthouse
lighthouse.
at
That's
Landsort,
the
right?
lighthouse. That's the
And
lighthouse.
what's the cutoff this year? Do you know?
They're doing 8-hour rolling.
Okay, 8 hour. So like, you've got to be within 8 hours of the
of the lead team.
of the lead team. Yeah,
Yep.
that's no
And then
joke.
I think once you get across Danziger Ghat, which is the 7K swim, which is almost at the end of the race, after that, I think you're good to go.
And and I've thought about this. It's a harsh race in so many ways. Um, it's you don't just sign up. It's an application process, and you got to send in a lot of stuff and have a pretty big athletic CV before you even end up at the start line.
There's honestly probably like 100, maybe 150 people in the world that can do it at the level that it needs to be done to even come close to finishing in that time gap. There are a lot of people that could do it over the course of 4 days or 5 days for sure. But to finish it in the time of, 50 hours roughly, like it is such a small amount of people because of the amount of swimming and how fast you actually have to swim. Like, I think that's the other piece is like, it's not just an easy swim. Like, we're swimming like, 115, 120 pace, like from the first half of the swim. And then it probably slows down a little bit, but like, you're still swimming like faster than most people swim in a triathlon for a 1500.
Yeah. So anyway, everybody keep your fingers crossed for Jarrod. That's the main point.
Finish 30.
Yeah. We'll keep watching the GPS trackers during it
Well,
too.
they've got full live coverage for it. So it's live coverage, follow the teams, and yeah, they're gonna have some stuff. I know we're using heart rate monitors, like on our arms and stuff. How accurate they are, that's a whole other discussion in terms of that all that stuff. We watched Tour de France and they've got the heart rate on there. They're just making those numbers up.
Jarrod's heart rate's at 92, swim at a 115 pace.
Probably like, but here's the funny thing is like, it should be at like, it should be probably like in the low 100s and then drift up a bit, but if I'm at like, honestly, if I'm at 150, I'm in big trouble because I'm probably at threshold. Like my max heart rate's probably like 175 or something. So I have a low max heart rate. So honestly, you want to be as efficient as possible. So it should be pretty low.
Hey, but now I have a question that you just walked right into. This is for both Nick and Jarrod. So one of the things that when I'm coaching people and also just training myself that I've noticed, and I'm just curious, like what your thoughts are if you know more of the science. Like, we get used to our heart rates. I know my heart rates very well where threshold is for running and biking, right? Swimming and paddling. We're just going to equate swimming and paddling since we're talking about one water race, but also adventure racing. Like, it's much harder to get your heart rate up for me when I'm paddling, like when I'm doing paddling sets. Like for me to sit at a 140 heart rate paddling, like I can run 140 heart rate for a long time and feel really comfortable, move at a decent pace. I can run at a 165 at my threshold for a long time, right? That feels like I'm working, but paddling and swimming, why is that? Like, where's the science? Who's the scientist that's gonna,
Because
is
you're
that,
horizontal.
but not when I'm paddling?
Yeah, it's true. Now you're paddling, but yeah, I know swimming heart rate is much lower. Like I've been wearing my watch a lot, and it actually does a pretty good job of it. So yes, it might be off a little bit, but like my heart rates for most of my swims are like 100, and then when I try and do some sets, like I'll do some fast stuff, some pickups, it starts to bump up. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to max out my heart rate unless I'm doing like flying 50s.
Right. Okay, but what about paddling? I'm taking away the swimming part. You answered that. What about paddling? Why is it so much harder? Like Dan and I trained our butts off before the Yukon 1000 to be able to like maintain 140 heart rate on the paddle, and at that level, it felt like we were literally the best endurance paddlers in the world. And like, it's still hard. I get back on paddling, and I'm like, it's really hard for me to get my heart rate up. Like, I could never get it to 175 paddling. I think I would like break myself trying. I'm just, you know, we're gonna have to, Nick. We got to
It
get
might be
a
we'll have to
paddling
look at
site.
it, but my guess is the limiting factor is not cardiovascular.
Yeah, that's what I would say too. It's because like running, your heart rate's always going to be higher
Yeah, for
because
sure.
so many more muscles are involved. Biking, you never can get quite as high. You can get high, but not like quite as high. So I would say it probably has something to do with the muscles that you're using and the way, like the amount of muscle that you're using, and that way.
So
That's my guess.
It's more
right,
strength and torque based
but
rather
do you
than
think?
cardiovascular turnover.
But I'm wondering if we had like Greg Barton on, or can you get Greg Barton on, Nick? Could that be great? I don't know if you know who Greg Barton is, but like I'm wondering like if you talk to elite level people that just paddle, like I wonder if part of it is just the, as you train more in a sport, because I've had, athletes that like can get their heart rate high running and they start doing bike training for me and they can't get their heart rate above 150, right? And then eventually you train high enough intensity, because I'm pretty well matched. Like I can get my heart rate to 190 on the bike and maybe 193 running. So there's very little difference. But I train both of those a lot. But I'm just wondering if we were to talk to like an Olympic 5K paddler,
Yeah,
like
I
if,
I can ask. I got a friend who's done like he does the kayak stuff, like canoe stuff. He does lifeguard racing too.
yeah, so yeah, just, next time you're chatting with them, because I think, it's an interesting, thing to just understand, because we all understand like the more of the running and the biking, and the swimming makes a lot of sense, but like for paddling, like you're sitting upright, you're using your legs, you're using core rotation, you're using a lot of effort. Like the thing is, if I look at my paddling RPE, like if I'm doing a K like steady state threshold effort on the paddle, it feels like I'm giving everything I have. And then my Garmin says, "Oh, that was a load of 5 and a recovery effort." And I'm just like, "F you, Garmin." Right? It's like those metrics just aren't quite dialed in with paddling, at least for me. That was my segue. Sorry. Thanks for trying to answer that question that I
I
can't
just did some Google AI research.
Yeah.
So essentially, it's saying kind of what Jarrod and I did. So it's saying that the limiting factor is going to be more on the muscular strength side than it is on the cardiovascular side. And then it's also saying that when you're sitting, it helps with some of the venous return of the blood flow back to the heart. So similar to like, okay, standing upright versus laying down and the sittings in the middle. So they're saying that it makes it easier for the blood to be transferred back so it doesn't have to pump as hard too.
Okay, cool.
But we should ask somebody who actually, yeah, we'll try to
Yeah.
get a paddling person on.
Yeah.
That'd be sweet. Awesome. Yeah, so I mean, we kind of hit a bunch of stuff, which is awesome. Jarrod, is there any general advice or tips you have for maybe people at home that are training for adventure racing?
Yeah, it's funny. I think and maybe Jason, you probably will agree with me on this, but I think a lot of people like miss out on the fun of doing the short races, doing the 8 hours, the 12 hours. They're fun, they're short, and they really help you hone your skills. And I see a lot of people do the big adventure races, the big expedition races, 4, 5, 7 days. But like doing the short fast stuff is so good for you to like think under pressure and do things fast. And I just actually am enjoying doing the short fast stuff a lot because it is like kind of pushing the limits a little bit more of trying to do stuff. So I think sometimes people are so excited to go do these long races that they kind of miss out on some of the fun that you can have just doing a short 1 day race, like doing a sprint triathlon versus a Ironman, right? You can do it in 1 day. So I think part of that is like, and I think the community, you end up around a lot more people and you get to see a lot more people. And I think that's a thing that I've really enjoyed about the sport too, is there's so much, what are you doing? How are you figuring this out? What gear are you using? That is the way that like triathlon used to be way, way back in the day. And I think adventure racing and swim run are like that right now, where there's a lot of kind of testing and figuring things out, and people are sharing ideas and tips. And I think the community part of it is really cool.
Well, so Jarrod, where can people find you?
In Florida or
Or
Sweden.
Sweden?
Yeah. It's funny. I feel like I'm so happy I got out of like triathlon and stuff before there was this need for all this social media stuff. So I post on social media on Instagram when I see things that should be posted, and so I do that. I have a website. It's just my name, but I don't think I've changed it in like 5 years. So maybe I'll update that at some point. But yeah, I mean, I think the cool thing about this community is that there's, I'd say Facebook is a very active, engaged population of adventure racers. And I think people ask good questions. People give great feedback. And so I think that's honestly one of the few reasons I go on to Facebook or social media, is to kind of look at that and engage in the community right now. But yeah, I mean, and if anybody wants to reach out and ask questions, definitely shoot me an email there. I don't know, you'll find it somewhere.
It's awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. We had a lot of great conversation, and yeah, I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, great to see you, Jarrod. Thanks, man.
Take care, guys.